I want to thank everyone that came out today. And this is kind of an annual thing that I started doing last year. So now that I've done it twice, it's an annual thing. But anyway, I'd like to give just a little bit of a, some people call it a state of the school address. I decided to call it District Pulse, but just kind of an update on where we're at, where we're heading. And some of this information is out there. If you go scavenge it for yourselves, there's some stuff off of the state report card that is, readily available. You have to kind of look for it. There's stuff on our strategic plan that's kind of out there. And so anyway, I'm just kind of packaging it together, and it's just another opportunity, I guess, to sort of interact with the public and chance for you guys to hear directly from me on some things. And it's gonna be a busy week for meetings. We've got tomorrow night, we've got the school board meeting. I think several of you will be there for that. And then on Wednesday, we've got kind of a town hall style meeting that we're doing to talk about a specific topic. That is the school-owned land and some of the possibilities for the future with that. So that's going to be Wednesday at 5:30. So kind of a busy week for meetings and that kind of thing. One aspect of this presentation, I guess, is kind of an unvarnished look at just where we're at. So there are some things, honestly, that aren't going to be great. There are some things that we're really proud of, and it's just kind of just where we are, warts and all, and obviously we can't include everything, but tried to kind of pick some of the things we thought were really important for the public to keep tabs on. So with that, I don't know how well you all can read that, but I'll kind of go through and I'll talk a little bit about some of these things. The first bullet, and I'm kind of looking out here at some of our people that graduated from this school years ago, and I'm sure it's kind of staggering to you to see that our enrollment right now is 607 for the district, and it's interesting. Those enrollment numbers are kind of, to a degree, they're ever changing, up and down throughout the year. So I'm sure everybody received one of this flyer that we mailed out about a month ago. And from the time we put that flyer together, our enrollment overall is already up from that. I think we've reported 588 on there, and we're sitting at about 607 right now. So the elementary is up a bit from this fall, 262, middle school is at 145, high school is at 168, Job Corps is at 32. One thing that's kind of interesting to note with that high school number, we've got a couple of small classes, and this isn't to excuse away any of the data or anything, but just, why some of those numbers are so low. Last school year, over the course of the school year, from first semester to second semester, we had lost 30-some students in the high school. And as we dig a little deeper into that, several of those went with a homeschool option, but I think over half of them graduated early. Graduated in December. And so that was actually kind of good news. We like to keep the kids here as long as we can, but if they're graduating early, that's kind of a sign of success for them. So we've got 67 certified teachers. That number can be a little misleading at times. It depends who you count. If you don't count the counselors, that brings it down to about 62, 63. Now some of the salary data, and I'll talk a little bit later why I think some of this is important, but we have the 19th highest average teacher salary. That was for the 24-25 school year. And our new average this year is $61,050. And that is, and I can't give an exact number because not all schools have yet reported. So it's kind of an ongoing report when you get to the end of the year. Then you kind of know exactly where you rank. But at this time of year, it's kind of more of an estimate. But I think that's going to move us into the top 15 for 25-26. We were 22nd in the state for the 23-24 school year and 25th the year before that. So that average teacher salary is trending up year after year. Base teacher salary was 14th in the state for 24-25. And our new salary of 53,040 is in the top 10 for 25-26. So we're anticipating top 10, real close to that. 30th in the state for 23-24, up from 45th the year before, up from 88th the year before that. And so when we talk about trying to retain teachers and recruit teachers, and we've got a few teachers in the audience, maybe they might say, well, the base salary doesn't really retain teachers, but it certainly does help recruit teachers. So we're kind of working on both ends of that thing to remain competitive in that recruitment and retainment area. Our cost per ADM is $14,470. Now that's the third highest for districts over 500 enrollment, and that's kind of creeping down. At one point, we were maybe at 2 or 1 highest or second highest. That's something we really need to work on. That's another one of those unvarnished statistics that isn't necessarily a great thing. $19.56 is the starting wage for hourly employees. Just 4 years ago, that was $12 per hour. So we've made some really good progress on that. When you want to talk about recruiting and retaining the best people, it's not just the teachers, but it's every educator that works in these buildings is important. And if we can bring those wages up competitively like that, I always feel like that's a good thing. Few more numbers. 32% of our students, so about a third, qualified for free and reduced meals. 19.8%, so about 1 out of 5, are identified with special needs or on an IEP. Overall, our district has a $2.18 billion assessed valuation. We levy or tax $2.3 million of local capital outlay revenue for FY26, with a maximum levy allowed at 2.47. The capital outlay levy is kind of a function of two things. It's statewide in statute, it's a maximum of 3 mils, and we're significantly below that. We're around 2, but it's 3 mils and or, but not to exceed a per student number. And so with our decline in enrollment, that kind of declines or diminishes year after year how much capital outlay taxes we can levy. But our board has been pretty responsible and has worked pretty hard to keep that below that maximum 2.47 that is allowed by our enrollment anyway. So $8.74 million general fund revenue for FY26 versus a potential $9.38 million at the maximum levy. 2.03 million local special ed revenue for FY26 versus a potential 3.16 million at max levy. That special ed levy is another thing that is a little bit of an interesting animal there. You try to be efficient and provide the services you need for students at the best cost possible, but really any special ed expenditures are kind of driven by IEPs, individualized education plans, and by federal law, students that qualify for an IEP or qualify for special education have to be put on a plan that is written by a team of individuals. And so, for instance, we might get a new student that moves to the district and they came from somewhere else, and the IEP follows them, and maybe that student requires a one-to-one paraprofessional. Well, that's not something we can just decide to get rid of, or, it's kind of IEP driven. So that one just kind of is what it is, but we're happy to report that we're under the maximum there in special ed as well. So that leaves $1.94 million, and you can kind of see where this is going. There can be a lot of decimals. You get a lot of decimals past $1 million, and you're still talking about quite a bit of money there. But I rounded those all off to do 2 decimal places. So $1.94 million that the Lead-Deadwood School District left in taxpayers' pockets, or that we chose not to levy for the current fiscal year. Talk a little bit about report card data. In our elementary school, we reported 44% proficient or advanced in English language arts versus 52% state average. 41% proficient or advanced in math versus a 44% state average. 45% proficient or advanced in science versus a 44% state average. Now, just real quick, I'll talk about those numbers, and it kind of applies also to middle school and high school. And a lot of times people ask, well, what is proficient? What does that mean? And it's really, I don't know, I wish they would use a different term, because it kind of implies if a student doesn't score proficient, that maybe they can't read or they can't do math, or actually that proficient level is kind of arbitrary cut score. But I think something we really need to pay attention to is our scores versus the state average. That's a pretty important comparison to look at year to year. And you can see in our elementary school, in a lot of those areas, we got some work to do. One thing I'd point out, that 45% proficient rate in science, so it's just a little above the state average. But historically, in the last longer than that, even probably the last 7 years, we were bobbing around 25%, 26%. Proficient or advanced in science. So in 1 year, we went from 26% proficient or advanced up to 45%. That's pretty good little bump. We'll take that. And we'll talk a little bit further down the line on what we attribute some of that to. Our attendance rate is 97% versus 87% state average, up from 76% just 2 years ago. So that's really kind of a number that we're pretty proud of. There's been a lot of deliberate work to get more kids within our walls. And I believe, can I stand here and promise you? I don't know, but I believe that over time, as we're dealing with like a 97% attendance rate versus a 76% attendance rate, we've got a lot better chance of teaching those kiddos and bringing them up above that state average if we just simply have them in our building more days. So I think that we'll see some dividends paid with that over time as we've gotten that attendance rate up. 6% chronic absenteeism. That is, to be chronically absent, I think the federal definition there is missing more than 10% of the days. And so the state average is 20%. So we're way below that. That's one place where you want to be, below the state average. In 22-21, just a few years ago, our chronic absenteeism rate was 29%. So a lot of people in our district have done a lot of hard work to try and get that number where it needs to be. 29.6% of our elementary teachers have a master's degree or higher, and our elementary teachers have 13.9 years of experience on average. Only 15.1% of our elementary teachers have 3 or fewer years of experience. So we've got some great new teachers with a lot of energy and great ideas, but the level of what you'd say are not real experienced, it's a pretty low level, 15%. A little bit of report card data for the middle school. These numbers were a little bit surprising. I would note that our middle school typically year after year has pretty strong showing versus the state average. And so this is something to watch, keep our eye on. We've got a little bit of a dip. That was a little unusual for our middle school, but certainly something we want to keep an eye on and make sure that doesn't become a trend. So 45% proficient or advanced in ELA versus 52% state average. 38% proficient or advanced in math versus 44% state average. 35% proficient or advanced in science versus 44% state average. And then again, our attendance rate is above the state average at 90% versus 87%. We were just at 75% 2 years ago. 14% chronic absenteeism versus the 20% state average. And just a few years ago in our middle school, we had 31% chronic absenteeism. So again, a lot of people have done some hard work to kind of bring that in line. We're really proud of that. 54.5% of our middle school teachers have a master's degree or higher. And our middle school teachers have 12.8 years of experience on average, with 16.5% of our middle school teachers having 3 or fewer years of experience. Now for the high school, High school ELA has been showing a really strong trend, I'd say, over the last 3 to 5 years. Similar to what we see here, 62% proficient or advanced versus 52% state average. 32% proficient or advanced in math versus 44% state average. 48%, excuse me, proficient or advanced in science versus 44% state average. 96% of our high school students graduate versus a 91% state average. And that one can be a little bit misleading here too. When we talk about homeschool students, people homeschool for a variety of reasons, and we're going to talk a little bit later. I'm going to talk a little bit later about trying to re-engage with some of these students that we, I guess, call legalized dropouts. And some people really do a great job of homeschooling and really take that pretty seriously. But the legislation is really pretty lax in South Dakota, and there's really no standard or accountability for homeschooling. So we've found that sometimes families that are being held accountable for behavior, attendance, that kind of thing, it can be pretty easy to fill out that, just check the box that I'm homeschooling, and then no questions asked, they're out. And that's kind of a function of state law. But something we're going to work to re-engage with those people on. 98% of our high school students graduate on time versus 86% state average, and 50% of our high school teachers have a master's degree or higher. High school teachers, kind of similar to the other two buildings, 13.7 years of experience on average. And just 14.5% of our high school teachers have 3 or fewer years of experience. This next one is kind of interesting. This is something where you look back and had a pretty strong trend of scoring above the state average year after year in the ACT. And last year reporting was 21.5% average ACT score versus 21.1% state average. The national average is around the high 19s or low 20 for ACT score. So that's something South Dakota does better on, something that Lead-Deadwood in particular has done better on, but it's going to be interesting to see. That number is going to drop. And some of you might be going, well, how do you know that? If it's going to drop, why don't you do something about it? Well, here's kind of an interesting wrinkle. The state legislature decided a few years ago that starting this spring, 2026, the ACT will become the state test that every junior is going to have to take. Okay, so rather than the Smarter Balance assessment that we've been taking in the past, every kid has to take the ACT. Now, the reason I say that's going to go down is because the ACT was designed as a college entrance exam. And we all know not every student that graduates from high school anywhere is necessarily planning to be on a university track. And so we're taking a test designed for university entrance, and we're applying that to all students, regardless of disability, regardless of their course preparation, regardless of anything. And yeah, our average is going to go down, but I'll be really interested to see what our average does compared to the state average. So just some other quick statistics on the ACT. 79% of Lead-Deadwood high school students that were tested were enrolled in a core or more curriculum versus 65% state average. And we've done that 4 or more state average for 3 years in a row. 43% of Lead-Deadwood high school students tested hit a 3 or 4 benchmark score. Score needed in an ACT subject area to indicate a 50% chance of obtaining a B or higher, or about a 75% chance of obtaining a C or higher in corresponding credit-bearing college courses. So I think what that shows is historically we've done a pretty good job of counseling to get the right kids taking the ACT, and the kids that have been college bound have done really well on that versus their peers across the state. Okay. Kind of the slogan we've adopted the last few years is cohesive community, boundless opportunity, discover your goal. And, we find that there's a lot of pride in the Lead-Deadwood communities, in their schools. And what we're most proud of here is our people, our communities, and the opportunities we provide for kids. And that comes down to programming and other things like that. So what are our greatest challenges moving forward? Well, I think number one is decline in enrollment. You'll hear a lot of public schools say that across the state, even across the nation. So it's something that we need to look at realistically. And then in the face of that, being able to provide the same opportunities that other larger schools provide. And I've said our greatest challenge is as our enrollment goes down, that kind of diminishes our capacity or makes it more difficult for us to offer the same slate of electives, like at the high school level, for instance. As you have fewer kids, fewer staff, it kind of becomes more challenging to meet the same needs. But I think we're up to the challenge. Another challenge moving forward is raising the bar on student achievement in spite of our challenges. We've got a pretty high poverty school district. We've got a school district with a high proportion of special needs students. And our demographics kind of work against us sometimes. And I think we need to look at raising the bar on student achievement in spite of those challenges and not using those things as an excuse to not do well. And then ensuring that our school is nimble enough to prepare our kids for a future that looks unlike anything anyone has ever seen. I think if we look at the impact that AI is going to have on education and on the workplace going forward, how do you prepare for that? Well, we need to jump into that with both feet and have our kids ready to go for a future that isn't like our past at all. So what are we doing about these challenges like decline in enrollment? And we're addressing the decline in enrollment with a two-pronged approach. I guess the first is in the short term, we're kind of looking at, from this point forward, when a staffing position becomes vacant, we have a retirement, something like that, really taking a hard look on how we can shuffle the deck and absorb some of those things. Because I think we really don't want to be in a position where a few years down the road, we have to do a RIF or reduction in force and have a person that wants to be here end up losing their job because we just don't have a position for them. So I think being proactive and taking opportunities when they arise to do some of that, like to absorb some of that through attrition, can help make us a little more efficient than we are currently. And then also to get more efficient, we're looking at a long-range plan that as we hit certain benchmarks, and I shouldn't use the word hit certain benchmarks. It's not like when your enrollment hits this is going to happen, because I think that it's a lot better to respond to enrollment trends rather than enrollment events. Just like I showed you, it would be easy for me to stand here and say, well, our enrollment's up, we're up 19 students over where we're in the fall, but we're going up. Well, that's an enrollment event. That's not really an enrollment trend. Likewise, a single year of going down is kind of an event, but I think it's pretty plain to see that our trend has been overall down year after year. And I think that we need to really look at some things structurally, systemically, that adjustments we're going to have to make. And I think the way to do that is with long-range plan, that as these certain things happen, then we're going to react appropriately rather than a knee-jerk reaction and doing something sudden. I think the other thing we need to do is, we're in a competitive market with open enrollment and kind of some of the fluidity that we see in kids moving schools and so forth. We need to become the district of choice in the Black Hills for students and staff. And some of the ways we're doing that, I don't have it on the bullets there, but when we talk about having the strong teacher salaries, even though we're looking at reducing our overall staffing in the next few years, that doesn't mean we're not going to be doing any hiring. There are certain positions that you just have to fill, and you don't always have the ability to move somebody over if they don't have the certification in that area, for instance. And so we always need to be in a position where we can hire the best teachers. And honestly, we know that we're 49th or 50th in teacher salaries in the country, as a state. Well, we're not competing with California for teachers, really. We're not competing with New Jersey. We're competing with Wyoming, Montana, North Dakota, Nebraska, and the rest of South Dakota. Our region right here within South Dakota is where we're really competing to get the best staff. And so it's important, when I talk about here's what's happening with our teacher salaries, with our staff wages. Reason that's important is because that enables us to be competitive in the market. Another thing we're working on is outreach to homeschool students and their families. And when I talked about some of those legalized dropouts, some of the people that are maybe homeschooling for the wrong reasons, it's easy to be dismissive of the kid who has missed 30 days in a semester and is, on the days he's here is in detention and different things like that. But there's a reason that things aren't connecting for some of these kids. And our staff, our administration, even our board is really working on taking a deep dive into, how can we serve those kids better? Some of that stuff is going to be looking at studying some alternative instruction options within our walls, using our existing resources in different ways. Well, I guess I did mention prioritizing teacher and staff salaries. Working to increase school spirit. When kids are excited about where they go to school and things that are happening here, it's kind of contagious. It's no secret that we've been in a bit of a slump. You go walk by our trophy cases and those things are full from like the early 2000s going on back into early in the last century. There's a proud tradition in this community and in this school of competitiveness and quality athletic and academic programming. And we really need to get back to that. And there are some things that we're seeing that are moving us in the right direction, some very deliberate actions by some of the people that we have on staff. One of the things that's been happening to boost our athletic programs is we've got a 0 hour for strength and conditioning, so kids can get a PE credit coming in 3 days a week. And we've got about 45 kids taking advantage of those opportunities 3 days a week before school. And kids can also take that PE credit during the school day, but it's something they can put towards their graduation requirements, but also it's building up our athletic programs at the same time. The other day, last weekend, I was at the ball game here in the gym, and our girls lost the game. I was kind of a downer. But what I was really excited to see, number one, our girls didn't give up the whole time. And game went into overtime, and our student section was just really on fire, supporting our girls in a positive way. And I think we didn't always see that. You go back 5 years, like I remember I can't speak to anything before that, but when I came here in 21, 22, a lot of times gym was pretty empty. It was pretty quiet, but it was sure great to see that active student section. We've got some people on our admin team, and this wasn't my idea. I can't take any credit for it other than sometimes I have the stamp. We've got the goose stamp. Staff members have a card that when they attend, every time they attend a school event, trying to get our staff more involved, they'll get a little stamp with the Pickaxe Pete on there. And once they fill up the card, they're eligible to get out of school early. And so, yeah, get out of school early. Yeah, okay. Anyways, then somebody from the administration team, whether it be me or one of the principals, will go and cover the class for that teacher or for that paraprofessional or whatever for the last hour or 2 hours of the day, give them a little extra time off, kind of a little bit of an incentive. And it's been something that's kind of been fun so far for the staff to participate in. And if you think it doesn't matter to the kids, you're wrong. They know who's at their games. They see that. They look out there and they know when their teacher or the para that works with them, they know when they're at the games. And it really has a positive impact on school spirit. One of the last things I'll hit on here, with some of this, focusing on the decline in enrollment. Even if our enrollment's going down, we still have to keep our facilities up to date. I look out in the audience here, and there's a couple of community members I've talked to, about this high school building, for instance, that they graduated from back in the 1970s. And I could hear the pride that these people had in this school building. This building is really one of the gems in the state of South Dakota. And that doesn't happen by accident, to have an 80-year-old building and have it look like it's in this kind of shape. Well, kind of across the district, we're working on keeping our buildings and our facilities up to date. And one example of that is the work, and people have questioned, why are you guys putting money into the middle school building when your enrollment's going down? Couple of reasons, about 3 reasons. One is keeping facilities up to date. 2 is increased student safety. We've got the new office space that's being built is more functional, designed for better student safety in the event of a crisis and that kind of thing. Also, the traffic flow that we're going to, it's not going to be perfect. There's some design parameters with just the lay of the land and the streets and so forth. But the safety issue of separating bus traffic at pickup and drop off from car traffic, so you don't have cars driving through where the bus stop is when they're coming to pick up their kids. They're on different sides of the building, or going to be moving forward. And then also a designated CTE, career and technical education space, for the middle school. So it's a matter of prioritizing resources, that we've got a total number of FTE, total number of teachers that we have. One of the priorities that we've identified is to have a feeder program in the middle school, so that as kids get to high school, they're ready to take on some of the courses in like family consumer science, wood shop, welding, all those kind of things. So what are we doing about these challenges, like ensuring we provide the same opportunities as other larger districts? The number one thing is, as our enrollment goes down, as we work to get more efficient, reprioritizing program. For example, the FACS program that we started up in the last 3 years, we put a kind of 2-pronged focus on that. And some people might say, what is FACS? Family Consumer Science. It's in, telling you where it is, we'll kind of tell you what it is, or what it's similar to. It's in the old home ec room. And I don't know why, but sometime years ago, all the kitchens were taken out of that facility and it just became an empty room. Well, now we've used some grant money, as well as some other, some capital outlay funds locally. And we've got 4 residential kitchens in that FACS room. We've got a commercial kitchen in that FACS room. And we've got a staff member that's just really on fire to teach the skills to these kids. And that's really, I think, an important program to have in a hospitality-based school. So reprioritizing some of these resources. And then while we work to become more efficient, we need to keep an eye on our ever-changing needs. What is the next program that we're going to need, and how do we make that fit into our limited resources as we work to get more efficient? So we're keeping our eye on that wall. So what are we doing about these challenges, like raising the bar on student achievement? One thing we did recently, and I think that I really kind of commend our elementary staff, especially. I think they really got on board, and I think it was challenging. You get kind of used to a certain curriculum, but we advanced by 2 years our review cycle, because the evidence was there that we needed a change with our elementary math. And you start really looking at, you've got good people, they're working hard, and we're not getting the results. But you start looking at the curriculum, maybe that's something that needs to be changed. So the staff really dug in, and they did a good job of analyzing that. And we determined 2 years early that the old curriculum wasn't working, and we've switched to a new math curriculum, and we're going to see results from that, I think, trickle up all the way through our program. We're working to incorporate interim assessment data building by building, to inform instruction. That's something that has always been done to an extent, but it's, something that we're continuing to focus on more and more at the building level. We've got a collaborative STEM program in the elementary school where kids within their specials rotation or their, encore time where they go to like art, PE, music, we've added a STEM class for kids. And in addition to that STEM where they go and they do science experiments and that kind of thing, to really fire the kids up, and the kids really love it, by the way. In addition to that teacher that's in charge of that, somebody that's been in the district a long time, she also then serves as kind of a science and STEM coach for our other elementary teachers, and kind of help them better teach, take a little bit of the planning load off of them, and be a person that they can collaborate with and bounce some ideas off of, to better teach science in our elementary school. We've been doing this for about 3 years now, and we saw the results last year, a big jump. Now, is that an enrollment event or not an enrollment event? Is that a blip, a single event, or is that a trend? That's what we have to find out. We're gonna work hard to make that a trend. And then again, touching on the competitive teacher and staff salaries to make sure we can always recruit and retain the best. We've got a strong staff that we're really proud of, and we're gonna do everything we can to keep it that way. So that's really about all I have. I don't have a nice way to wrap it up and summarize and put a bow on it, but, you know, kind of we took a look at the good, the bad, and the ugly, and, we also addressed at least a few of the ways that we're currently working to address some of the things where we need to improve. And so we've got a lot to be proud of. We've got a lot of work to do. And with that, I'm going to close, and I'm going to thank you all for coming. Thanks.